Initially, if you look at the career path of Big B, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, you would see the kind of movies being made in the 1970s, angry young man, one man rising up against the system. But right now, even the movies or Bollywood or the regional cinema is not capturing the anger of the youth. And instead, we are seeing the kind of movies like Durandar being made, projecting national pride.
Let's suppose the government ends up generating some amount of jobs and huge amount of jobs on an annual basis. Still, it will never have the capacity in order to employ all the graduates in our country. Of all the people who graduate in our country, only around 6 to 7% are able to find jobs in the first year.
Two main issues which is leading to this obsession with government jobs. One, I think, is it has to do with the colonial legacy, that a government job is something to aspire for. Second is about, I think, the lack of risk-averse nature of middle-class families in India. Government job is seen as safe, secure, whereas a private job is still seen as uncertain.
When should you decide that I need to quit this government exam preparation and move elsewhere?
For example, today, if you want to launch a startup and you have an idea that, okay, I am going to manufacture a machine which is going to clean the room within 50 seconds, you will not be able to get secure funding. Why? People will ask you, is there a model abroad which is working? That is why we have a Flipkart to an Amazon, we have an Ola to an Uber. We are good at copying the models.
They don't want to migrate also.
They don't want to migrate, correct?
I need a job, but I need a job in my district, very close to where I live.
Yes.
How do you change that perception? There are no private jobs, there are no government jobs, no venture capitalists to fund your new idea.
Most IT leaders have already taken a call that we will not compete with the global giants. It's not possible that we will not compete with DeepSeek or Anthropic. We are looking to offer services, just like how we did with IT. We'll just provide the back-end services. And this is a dangerous path, and the government seems to be encouraging this path as well.
But while you are correct, I will also present a counter view.
It's very important for a woman, particularly in today's circumstances, to have financial independence so that she's not dependent on someone and she can have her own agency and control, including over her reproductive self. What is the ideal time for a woman to get married? Hello and welcome to Unacademy. Is India's youth angry? Is India's young unemployable or unemployed? Is AI going to take away your jobs or create more? Particularly for women, what is the ideal time for you to get married? Should you give in to the pressure of your family or resist and focus on financial independence instead? Should you be preparing for government exams or look elsewhere at entrepreneurship or private sector? Or should you move abroad? Is India becoming an unlivable country for India's young? All these questions and much more we will discuss in this interesting podcast. Joining us today are top Unacademy educators, Chetan sir and Mukesh sir. Starting with you, Chetan, is India's young angry? And if yes, is it because of social media? Or was it that India's young was always angry, but right now they are finding a medium to express and ventilate their grievances and anger through social media?
The youth always have a lot of aspirations. And since time immemorial, aspirations may not be fulfilled all the time. And now you have social media where that anger, the frustration can be channeled. So maybe we are seeing the amplified impact of that. That explains why a new party like, let's say, Cockroach Janta Party, the kind of following they are masked on social media. That explains that there are these unfulfilled hopes. They look at opportunities present everywhere else, and you have degrees going nowhere, fetching not enough opportunities for the youth. So that somewhere, I think, builds up that anger and frustration against the establishment. So this is nothing new. It would have existed before as well. But now you're seeing that being channeled on social media primarily.
Initially, if you look at the career path of Big B, Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, you would see the kind of movies being made in the 1970s, angry young man, one man rising up against the system. But right now, even the movies or Bollywood or the regional cinema is not capturing the anger of the youth. And instead, we are seeing the kind of movies like Durandar being made, projecting national pride. Is that also the reason why youth is unable to find its voice through traditional media and is now using the new modern Western means of amplifying their anger?
But media alone wouldn't play such a big role, I guess. If, let's say, there was a channel where the youth could communicate their views, their ambitions with, let's say, the establishment. Right now, if, let's say, governments are not listening to the youth, if they're not looking at the actual ground realities, you have lakhs of graduates coming out, competing for jobs across exams, from banking to SSC to even grade B exams. And they see that the state maybe probably doesn't care about them. They feel that the social security of sorts is not available to fulfill their aims. And they probably, social media gives them a wider exposure. They see the kind of opportunities available abroad, and maybe they'll question, why not in India? Why not for us? Yes, media could be a channel where that frustration could have been vented out. Now, social media becomes that platform. Look at all the Gen Z protests from, let's say, Nepal to Bangladesh, across the world, from Europe to Africa. The youth in general have been able to channel that anger, frustration through social media. It gives you that reach, it gives you that visibility. But again, I think there are key lessons for here for the society, for the government as well, that you need to read those signs, you need to address some of the genuine concerns which are there. Holding exams properly, ensuring that there's a level playing field, creating enough employable opportunities, providing the skilling opportunities as well for the youth, so that they are ready for the industry, ready to get those jobs which matches their education and skill set. I think that debate needs to take place.
Okay, sir. Government alone cannot be the job provider. This is where you need to be honest with our young as well, that you should not only look at a government job, maybe try entrepreneurship or private sector, or be a job creator rather than a job seeker. How would you look at it?
So, first of all, I'll take a moment to address your basic question about India's youth. Why this question is very important. We are a youthful country. We should not forget that. We are not a Japan or a South Korea or a Sweden or a US as well. Why? Around 65% of our population is below the age of 35 years. And that means they represent aspirations. They represent an aspirational India. Now, what they see at their household, for example, what they would have seen their parents go through, they want a better life for themselves. Now, it reflects everywhere. When you are talking about, for example, jobs, it is a very important point. Let's suppose the government ends up generating some amount of jobs and huge amount of jobs on an annual basis. Still, it will never have the capacity in order to employ all the graduates in our country. Presently, if you take a look at some of the numbers, conservative estimates which represent that of all the people who graduate in our country, only around 6 to 7% are able to find jobs in the first year. And what is even more appalling is, out of that 6 to 7%, only around 3 to 4% are able to find jobs in a white collar industry or a white collar sector. So the remaining portion, more than 90% of the population, is basically left in a lurch. Now, if the government tries to fulfill that gap, there will be a huge amount of a mismatch in terms of even government's capacity to provide. The last time you saw it in an economic model was something which was implemented in Soviet Union and even in parts of East Germany. And we all know what happened as a consequence of that. Later on, you had bankruptcy, which was common, and nobody had grains to eat and so on. So economically, it is not feasible. So what should the youth do? Now you say that they should skill themselves. I couldn't agree more. Upskilling is very, very important, and we can explore the options of upskilling, what is present in our country as compared to what the Western countries have as we move ahead. But let's take a look at the reality. Around 60% of our population, as per the last census, is rural. Now, in those rural areas, imagine a young boy growing up. Now, they are not getting the same exposure when it comes to education as compared to, let's suppose, someone growing up in a Delhi or a Mumbai. So automatically, they have that inferiority sense that I won't be able to compete, maybe in terms of communication, maybe in terms of value addition. Now, where does that person go? Let's suppose a person doesn't have the economic might to get themselves enrolled in good colleges. they would basically rely on the upskilling which the government provides. Now, what is the upskilling that the government provides? In the form of ITIs, isn't it? Now, everybody knows that for the past almost 3 to 4 decades, these ITIs are largely defunct. In every batch of an ITI, you will find not more than 2 to 3 people finding reasonable jobs. And when I say reasonable jobs, mind you, these are not corporate level jobs. These are still jobs as a technician, as a kind of a
Electrician.
plumber, carpenter. Now, in this case, why will someone invest their time, invest their money in terms of upskilling? So, what do they resort to? They see that, okay, there is some predictability that the government has released some amount of jobs, let's suppose as a group D, as a clerical, and that is where the major crowd is automatically drawn upon that. Now, there is also that vicious cycle. You are not able to clear that examination because of the lack of the skill that you have. The examination oftentimes does not represent the ground realities. The framing of the questions oftentimes is not very uniform, so to say. And as a consequence, that person continues to waste year after year. You grow older, you grow and you reach your late 20s. And at that point of time, the industry has further moved ahead as compared to when you left your college. Now you are further more unemployable. So, as a consequence, what is left for you? Now, we might criticize gig economy left, right, and center, but we have to agree that today that is the main rescue that the youth are finding. You will find even in the city that we are in, Bangalore, the IT capital of the country, you will find graduates from good colleges having some software job. They also have to operate a cab by the night just to ensure that the income is meaningful. Now, why do they have to do that? Why is it that the youth is always in a race against time in order to earn something? Why? Because our cost of living has been increasing in the cities. And in the rural areas, the standard has not been met. The basic living standard, for example, the basic sanitation, we might declare ourselves to be an open defecation free country. But we all know the ground realities of open drains, open sewerage everywhere. So a person aspires to go into the city. The rural to urban migration in our country is so huge. Now, that young individual, let's suppose, who has come from Bihar, moved to a city like Mumbai, will that person be able to find an iota of a possible affordable housing? No.
So what you're saying is government should restrict through its policies rural to urban migration, should provide meaningful standard of opportunity in rural areas itself, so there is no need for migration. That's what you're saying.
No, I am not saying that the government should restrict migration. Migration, in my opinion, is always good for the economy in the long run. What I am saying is the government should be an enabler, not an end goal. So, when I am saying enabler, create the education system on the ground, create the upliftment of the ITIs on the ground, allow the students. Not everybody wants to be an engineer and a doctor. Let's be very clear about that. Someone who wants to earn to support their family, provide that vocational training right after class 8 or class 9th.
That's exactly what happens in Germany. If you're not doing good in science or maths, there are enough opportunities elsewhere. You can be uh, trained as a plumber, as an electrician, as a mason, and these are traditional art forms and art crafts that you may be trained in.
And also look at the kind of wages that, let's say, electrician draws in a country like Australia or in US. It is comparable to what a professional, a white collared worker would get. But that's not the case in India. These works are seen as menial tasks where people are hesitant to, pay as per the skill of the worker. So that pay gap which is there between, let's say, these kind of jobs, the routine manual jobs, compared to, let's say, a software engineer or professional, that is quite massive in the country. So unless until you standardize the informal sector, right now when you look at all these services that you're talking about, they are all completely unorganized, largely in the informal sector. So unless you streamline that, increase the minimum wages, set up a standard, a bar, I think this gap will always remain.
And what Mukesh sir is saying, there is this vicious cycle when an individual who does not see himself or herself fit for a private sector job now approaches a coaching institute, enrolls in a program so that you are trained for a government job. You don't clear in your first attempt, and then that cycle continues. You're losing the most productive years of your youth. Then you are not only away from the skill set, you are also unemployable and a burden on the society. Then when should you decide that I need to quit this government exam preparation and move elsewhere?
I think first the youth have to be honest. They have to introspect. There are two main issues which is leading to this obsession with government jobs. One, I think, is it has to do with the colonial legacy, that a government job is something to aspire for. Second is about, I think, the lack of risk averse nature of middle class families in India. Government job is seen as safe, secure, whereas a private job is still seen as uncertain. So this sentiment prevails not just in rural India, in urban India as well. I see that in my family circle as well. So this mindset has to go. The risk-taking mindset has to come in. You're talking about why youth don't take up entrepreneurship opportunities. So that calls for risk-taking, and I think that's where the government should be an enabler, creating, let's say, easy credit opportunities.
That is there, but why is the young not utilizing these opportunities?
I think one, I think it's about the job security, where a government job or a banking job gives. Maybe they don't see that in the banking
How
sector.
do you change that perception?
The youth will have to diversify themselves. They'll
For
have to-
example, the government should always nudge the citizens to do something. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan that you were talking about, largely successful progress because we have been successful in creating an open defecation free India, particularly in rural areas. So this was the nudge from the government. What extra else could the government do to convince the people that government job should not be your destination? It may or may not happen. And let's be clear and frank that government cannot provide job to 100% of the youth. So you have to look elsewhere, whether it is upgrading your skills, entrepreneurship, do something else, creative pursuits, for example, the orange economy that we are talking about when it comes to the content creators. You need to find meaningful ways of employment.
But this has to do with our education system as well. Right from the beginning, from primary school, students are taught to think in a linear fashion, that you get good marks, you secure a stable job. There is no focus on exploring your creativity. There is no opportunity for that. A student would not have the awareness to look at different sectors.
If
right? This
yeah, and from this, I have sorry to interrupt you, but a very good example. People from different backgrounds, when they enroll themselves in school, they are asked to draw a scenery. Everybody draws two mountains with a sun rising from behind, a topsy-turvy kind of a river, a hut, and a tree, and few birds. Creativity dies in the education system at its very genesis. That is what I think Chetandra has been talking about. But if I can also talk about some of the other aspects, what he brought into the point, that this obsession with the government jobs, there is a very good study. It is not as if this obsession with government jobs prevails in a city like a Mumbai. You will not find that. You will not find that obsession with a government job, let's suppose, in the urban areas of Gujarat. But you will find this obsession with the government job in a Bengal, in a Bihar, in an Uttar Pradesh, in a Madhya Pradesh. So there is this study that due to our colonial past, those areas which had experienced greater amount of colonial oppression, those areas always, and the people and the generational insight, that always has remembered this as the Afsargiri. And that is why it is imbibed from the very childhood days that if you want to excel in life, you have to be part of the government. Only then you are secure. What you find in the case of a state like UP, where a Group D level examination was, the examination notification was released, you had more than 25 lakh aspirants, and including the PhD holders. And their only aspect was social acceptance, the case of a pension, and job security. Now, when we say that they should look for a private job, you are absolutely correct in that they have to look for a private job. But there is an economic argument to be made in this. If you compare the various different economies at different stages of their growth, there is a threshold which is referred to as the risk-taking capital. Presently, we are below that threshold. That is why I will just give you a tangential implication. For example, today, if you want to launch a startup and you have an idea that, okay, I am going to manufacture a machine which is going to clean the room within 50 seconds, you will not be able to get secure a funding. Why? People will ask you, is there a model abroad which is working? That is why we have a Flipkart to an Amazon, we have an Ola to an Uber. We are good at copying the models because we don't have that risk-taking capital, we don't have that risk-taking appetite. So when does that risk-taking appetite come into an economy? It is always linked to your per capita income. Now, when majority of your labor force, which is your largest employer of the labor force, it is agriculture sector employing around 45 to 46% of your labor force. Unless and until that agricultural income indicates an increase, you can always argue that this insecurity will always be prevalent in the mindset. Secondly, which is the sector of your economy which can provide largest number of jobs in the shortest possible time?
Manufacturing.
No.
No, other than manufacturing, I'm talking about the low skilled jobs.
Uh-huh.
It is the construction sector. Whenever construction sector does well, it is a virtuous cycle. For example, the steel sector will do well, the cement, masonry, everyone, the plumbers. Now, despite the huge amount of unemployment that we have, we are also faced with a reality that India is going to face a shortage of close to around 1 million skilled workers when it comes to carpenters, electricians, plumbers. And as a consequence of that, the infrastructural delay and as a consequence, the impact on the economy can be few percentage points of GDP. That is something that has been predicted by the IMF as well. So it is not only about glorifying these jobs. Immediately, the government does not have the means to bring the wage of these particular sectors to the level of a software engineer. It is going to be the case of specialization. You do need certain particular industry-led demand has to be created. Industry cannot be isolated from this. Industry to institute link is absolutely cut off. What institutions are producing, industry is not requiring. What industry is requiring, there is no presence of that. That is why Uday Kotak had famously said that around 95% of Indian graduates are unemployable. They don't have the necessary skill set.
Because we are teaching obsolete content to our students, even
Yeah.
in engineering colleges.
For example, let's suppose now I am an electrical engineer. Now the curriculum that I was taught in the college, now that has been defunct in the US since the 80s. Now, if you go to any of the US engineering college and you try to search for electrical engineering, you will never be able to find a branch. You will get electrical and computer because everything happens in an automated fashion now. Now, even in the elite colleges, what we are training the individuals is something, a technology which was present and prevalent in the 80s. And we are expecting that manpower to serve us till the 2050s. Because we are not a society which believes in continued education system.
Should then the government also outsource the jobs? Let's say a lot of people from Kerala, well trained in nursing, and then these nurses do spectacularly well in Middle Eastern countries. This is the model that can be employed where the government can recruit individuals and then send them abroad on meaningful wages.
That's what India has been pushing
Yes.
for. We have entered into migration mobility agreements with multiple countries. But this has its own set of issues. Yes, today, Indian caregivers, they play a very big role, especially in aging societies, in Israel, in Japan, in many African and European countries as well. But this contributes to the anti-immigration trend as well. It raises many issues of the safety, the security of the Indian workers abroad. Look at Taiwan, for example. Recently, we entered into an agreement that India would send a certain number of workers. But there's already a lot of racism, ground level opposition against Indian workers being employed. Though they have a requirement, India is looking to outsource the labor. We are looking to export our human resource. But in the current global environment that is there, the trend against migration, this could easily backfire.
But if Filipinos are accepted, why not Indians?
No, right now this trend is across, like be it a Pakistani migrant, Filipino migrant, or a Bangladeshi migrant, or an Indian migrant. This has been the signs that you see across Europe and
But you won't see the kind of hatred that we see against South Asians, for example.
South Asians, yeah. In general, it has been more.
Not directed against the Filipinos.
True. But the Philippines example is a very good example. Now, Filipinos, they are the caregivers across the world. Now, if you take a look at the developmental parameters in Philippines, it is very much dependent on the remittances. The development on the ground is absolutely lacking. If you move out of Manila, obviously. Now, what happens in these societies where out migration becomes a common factor is something which is far more dangerous and far more, devastating in the long run. Why? When
The government steps back.
yes,
Yeah.
the
But that won't happen in India.
if you have the skilled people out migrating, now there is no pressure.
We're not talking about skilled, semi-skilled.
Semi-skilled, it is easier to be the, let's suppose, the workforce generator of the world. That is what, as Chetan sir also said, the Prime Minister has also spoken about it on multiple platforms, that we have to aspire to be that. But that is still restricted to certain parts of the country. This, if can be implemented in larger parts. For example, now we are in the era of...
But then, even if it is implemented, my point is that there are, with due respect to our young, they don't want to migrate also.
They don't want to migrate, correct?
I need a job, but I need a job in my district, very close to where I live.
Yes.
How do you change that perception?
This is the good part and the bad part as well. Good part because this is aspirational part of India, and that will change our country in the coming times.
But then it may also lead to this demographic dividend becoming a demographic nightmare.
Disaster.
Yeah.
So that is happening because jobs cannot be equally distributed everywhere. If you talk about the basic concept of the job creation, where are jobs present? So since 1800s, the Germans have been working upon it, and they came across what is known as the growth centers and the growth poles. Now, as many number of growth poles you have in your country, better is the availability of jobs, and people don't have to migrate that far. So for a person, let's suppose in a region like Varanasi, it is easy for that person to move to Lucknow as compared to a Bangalore. So you need more such growth centers in our country. Now, we have to ask ourselves, post-independence, how many new such cities have we created? We have not.
But no, off late, if you look at the industrial clusters, the corridors which have come up, you take big industrial cities like, let's say, Chennai and Bengaluru. Along the entire stretch, you have these other smaller tier 3 cities which have come up, smaller towns, where there are a lot of manufacturing industrial opportunities.
So this is what is...
So
yeah.
this again comes
This
down
is
to state.
also a north and south problem. We don't see the magnitude of the problem that we see in north in south.
Yeah. What you are talking about, the Bangalore-Chennai corridor, for example, the same prevails in the north from all the way. Earlier, it used to prevail from Delhi to Chandigarh. Now it has extended to Kalka in Himachal. This is what is termed as conurbation, a complete urbanization of the entire stretch. It has got its own set of problems. Let's not forget that. For example, the youth is also frustrated on the ease of living. A person who has attained all the degrees in their life, they come to a city like Bangalore, they have got the best job. They expect a kind of a meaningful life. They see
You mean the
social
quality
media-
of life?
Quality of life. And they find that half the city is submerged in one day rainfall. Now, what you're talking about in these corridors, it happens that there is a kind of a complete destruction of nature. And as a consequence of that, there is an overt stress on the natural resources. So you will have water scarcity, sanitation issues, air pollution. You will not have meaningful housing. And what also comes across this is a law and order issue, which the states have never been able to manage. And that is why these corridors, rather than expanding these corridors, we can have the natural hub and spoke model that let Bangalore serve as a hub. But don't look at towards Chennai. Why don't you look towards a Mangaluru, a Mysuru, for example?
That is what is being developed.
Yeah.
If you look at the Bangalore-Mysore stretch, the new age towns which are coming up, the AI city which is being developed, or
The
the
emphasis campus shifting to Mysore.
or focus on coastal areas of Karnataka as well. Recently, DK Shivakumar has announced a AI plan,
Yes.
AI government-led university to create new age skills, new age opportunities.
Which, glad you talked about AI. Should India's young be worried about AI? Is it going to snatch their jobs? Something that we saw when computers were introduced in the late 1980s.
See, every phase of industrial revolution has brought out the same fear, be it from steam engines to assembly line production to computers to AI. Along with taking away some routine random jobs, it will create plenty of opportunities as well. as long as you acquire the right skills, as long as you're placed in the right sectors, there will be plenty of opportunities that will open up.
But data entry jobs, designers, operators, all these jobs
Writers.
can be outsourced to AI, where individuals will lose their employment opportunities.
This is where the industry and the government have a bigger responsibility.
Or
They
can
have
we
to-
say that AI may not snatch your jobs, but someone who will not leverage AI and upskill themselves, they're going to be at loss.
True. Every individual, the youth, they have to upskill. And along with that, the industry and the government, they should focus on innovation. Right now, if you look at Indian industry's ambitions with regard to AI, it's quite scary. Most IT leaders have already taken a call that we will not compete with the global giants. It's not possible that we will not compete with DeepSeek or Anthropic. We are looking to offer services, just like how we did with
BPO.
IT. We'll just provide the back-end services. And this is a dangerous path, and the government seems to be encouraging this path as well.
But while you are correct, I will also present a counter view. Now, the 70s, the 60s, and the 80s created the IBMs, the Apples, and the
IBM has
Microsoft.
crashed massively.
Yeah.
Why? Because they didn't innovate.
They didn't innovate. They created the software sector, right? They created these chips. They created the PCs. We lag behind in that. We created Infosys and the TCS and the Wipros of the world. They have been one of the largest job creators in our country, not because of government intervention, but the famous joke goes that the government could not understand it. And that is why it was free of regulations. That is the same argument in this case. There will be a certain kind of a growth momentum which will be provided by chiefly US in terms of the new generations of AI. But how to implement that AI when it comes to healthcare sector? Now in healthcare sector diagnostics, now that is where we have a proficiency. How to implement that AI, let's suppose in financial inclusion. That is where there is a huge opportunity which lies in front of us. So even if now when we say that we have to be at the forefront of that AI race, it is an undeniable fact that we should be there. But that is not something which can be achieved in a jiffy or in an
100%.
overnight situation. You need to get at the forefront of the semiconductor race in order to be able to innovate those new engines. Otherwise, you are dependent on other companies like NVIDIA's and so on for the GPUs. Not only that, you need to have enough amount of energy resource in order to fuel those data centers. We are not an energy surplus country. We are
So what you're giving a very pessimistic view for India's young. What are they going to do then?
what I'm saying is that if the
Government jobs cannot be for all. Private jobs also cannot be for all. Our economic growth is as the economy grows, the contribution of agriculture has to necessarily come down, which is not the case with India.
the case.
So the job should have come from manufacturing sector, but we see India is a services-led economy where the jobs in any case are less. And with AI coming in, services-led sector are going to be automated.
Yeah.
So there are no private jobs, there are no government jobs, no venture capitalists to fund your new idea. Then what is the scope? What is the
My point
prescription
is
for you?
that, my point is that AI-led executional jobs.
Because why I'm asking this question is we don't tell our young and make them aware of the crisis that is staring at our face. We're still telling them apply for a government job or do engineering, medical science, go for an MBA. But then there will be jobs, but not commensurate to your skill. So what are they going to do?
So if you ask me, if I have to suggest someone out there, I would always say that the early part of your 20s, max up till 26, should be the phase of experimentation. Now try to do whatever you want. If you want to apply for a government job, that is the time period. If you are not able to clear that within the time window of, let's suppose, 1 to 2 years, that is the time to take a call and then ask yourself, what am I good at? Or what are my basic proficiencies? How do I upskill myself? Look at the available jobs around you. It might not be the case that from day one, you will be the senior manager somewhere. You have to start somewhere. Find your...
But don't you think you are also only talking about those who are engineering graduates or those who are graduates in commerce? What about those BA, MA, BSc, MSc students who are staring at an uncertain future.
So that is where you need to get yourself upskilled in certain areas, like what you talked about, the AI, the role of AI. That is the very predominant thing right now. But there are other sectors as well. For example, it is never too late to get yourself upskilled and trained for, let's suppose, a paramedical staff. Right? You can start in your mid 20s and you can find a meaningful employment by, let's suppose, the later part of your 20s. Other than that, business, entrepreneurship. Now, everybody doesn't have the appetite for entrepreneurship. There are endless number of businesses coming up across the major cities and the tier 2 towns of the country as well, like your CCDs, for example, like your Starbucks, etc. Now, they give you a very initial experience as, let's suppose, a store manager. Now, even those roles give you an experience, and that exposure can be very important. So, for the youth, I would always suggest chase exposure. Please do not get confined to your cocoon and a comfort space. That this is my aim. Always try to have a much greater exposure in terms of skilling, in terms of training.
But 20-30% students, they are going to find their way, regardless of what the market condition is, regardless of what the geopolitical situation is. What about the 60-70%, the so-called average students who have had average academic record? What are they going to do?
I think this is where we are missing one key point. Getting your aspiration fulfilled or getting a job is not just about the money, it's not just about getting the right skills. We are ignoring the social mobility angle. One reason why students will be obsessed with government jobs is because they're taught from their household that if you become an IAS officer, if you land a government job, you will see that social upliftment where caste becomes almost immaterial. Similarly, technology and money can play that role. So Mukesh sir said start diversifying from your 20s. I would say start earlier, start from your high school days. Think of multiple opportunities. Maybe one in your domain, whatever you're doing, engineer, doctor, BA, whatever. The other probably in the creative field, the other towards government services. Plan your career in such a way that you give enough number of attempts for a government exam, whatever exam it is. But it should not become your lifelong obsession.
And don't follow the herd mentality. That
Yeah,
if everybody
exactly.
is applying for, let's say, UPSC,
UPSC.
I should also do the same.
Need not.
You need to look inward,
Yeah.
look into the mirror and see whether you have the capability and the potential to crack this examination.
Right. And there are enough opportunities in the market, either to land a good job or to start something on your own or to land a government job. It's just about diversifying, having that exposure, as Mukesh sir said, that they should start at a very young age.
What about a woman? It's very important for a woman, particularly in today's circumstances, to have financial independence. So that she's not dependent on someone and she can have her own agency and control, including over her reproductive self. What is the ideal time for a woman to get married?
For any youth, irrespective of their gender, I think without financial stability and that stability with regard to their career, one should never be settling down. But again, I mean, you can't prescribe a uniform approach for everyone.
And why are you calling marriage settling down?
As in, you settle down, life becomes more calmer, peaceful. I mean, you're not in search of something, not just as a partner, but in terms of career, everything settles down. For women in particular, in a patriarchal society, it's very crucial to achieve that financial independence. I can understand what kind of pressure there would be there from the family side, from the society, but the only way they can beat that is through education, is through their empowerment, financial empowerment. So landing a good job, stabilizing themselves financially, taking their independent choices is very, very important. And this is something they have to inculcate. Probably the education system won't do it for you. Your family or society may not do it for you. You have to do it on your own.
What about, Mukesh sir, UPSC? Should young Indians be aspiring towards UPSC as a career option?
It depends, but there is something that I always suggest to everyone, regardless of the field of expertise, regardless of your background. At least once in your life, you should prepare for the examination that is UPSC. Why do I say so? There is no other examination across the country which can provide you with the level of job that UPSC does, first of all. Secondly, that is the ultimate aspiration. Secondly, when you prepare for UPSC, you get the idea of the country in a manner which no other kind of education system could have done. And that is something which will get your proficiency in terms of the communication, in terms of your overall comprehension of the different aspects together. It makes you much more proficient and a good employee as well in any sector that you go.
And now there are private sectors who are opening doors to those who have reached till the interview stage, till the
Absolutely,
means
yes.
examination, because you're good at research.
Yes, you're good at research. And I have known many of the candidates who have prepared for the UPSC. For some reason or the other, they could not clear the prelims, for example. I'm just talking about the proficiency that UPSC preparation gives you. They appeared for the CAT examination and they killed it there. The interview score was so good that they landed up in the best of the management colleges of the country. And eventually, even their performance while doing that management course was much better than the average student, because they had a better idea of the economic system. They had a better idea of the geographical realities.
Interdisciplinarity.
Yes.
I think the exposure which our schooling system doesn't provide,
UPSC
UPSC provides
system
that.
provides.
The preparation journey provides that exposure.
So that is why I always would recommend that do prepare for UPSC. But it should not be what Chetan sir said. It should not be your lifelong obsession. Take an honest call. And this is where I have
Give 2 attempts. If
Two
you're
attempts.
clearing, go.
Yeah.
Not, then look elsewhere.
And within 2 attempts, you get an idea whether I am making some progress or not, whether I am stagnating. If you feel that you have a very tangible chance to clear this next attempt, then take a next attempt, because we have seen toppers emerging out of the 4th attempt as well. But you have to take that call. Nobody else can tell you that. Your parents won't tell you that. Your teachers can't tell you that, because you know inside that whether you have a good chance of clearing this examination, whether you are good at the skill set required for this examination or not. The moment you take that call, give everything for the next attempt or step out almost immediately.
I asked both of you this question. What about those who are pursuing or have pursued BA, MA, BSc, MSc? What about them? If you are some of them, look at private sector, tuition industry, which can give you good salary to start with. And education has no end whatsoever. You can utilize online medium to teach students to reach out to massive audience, thereby create your own niche, create your own brand, plus get meaningfully employed as well. That's the financial independence that online tuition industry can provide you. You can look there as well, rather than blindly chasing a government teaching job. That's something that you should focus on. Towards the end, one word of advice, Chetan sir, for our young.
Sarva sir, you started with how youth are venting out their frustration on social media. But let me tell you, the same social media platforms today are enabling so many small businesses. And these small business owners are parallelly pursuing their education, pursuing something else, could be UPSC or something else. So I think these avenues is something the youth have to explore. There's no point in complaining, pointing fingers. Yes, when your aspirations are not fulfilled, when you feel you're not heard, the anger comes out. But channel it in the right way.
But the anger is justified. If there are paper leaks.
100% justified. The government has to fix, or the institutions from, let's say, from the NEET exam to the various other exams where controversies have erupted.
Karnataka Public Service Commission chairman
Being
being
suspended.
removed because 2 of his daughters are being selected for the services. When you see nepotism, corruption in the government sector, when it comes to recruitment, obviously the young will be averse to risk taking,
Dejected as well.
dejected.
And they are right in seeking answers from the government. So you do expect reforms, educational reforms. You need to learn from other models of conducting exams. If you can't conduct a simple exam without leaking of a paper, or without, let's say, these controversies coming up, then what are these institutions doing? So they're absolutely right in venting out the anger, raising these questions. They deserve those answers. But at the end of it, you need to create a life for yourself. You need to uplift your family, your community. And I think that's where students have to be more enterprising, risk-taking, think outside the box, and use all the avenues, the opportunities that are available, which wasn't there a few decades ago.
No discussion on Indian society would ever be complete unless and until you speak about caste. There are employment opportunities for the so-called upper castes, but when it comes to the so-called lower castes, it seems that the world is cruel against them. If somebody who is from that community is watching us right now, what would be the advice that you can give them?
While you are correct that It is one of the greatest discriminators that our society still has. And there is no denying the fact, whether you are north, south, east, west, that problem does persist. The only way out of that vicious cycle is the light of education. Get yourself educated, try to find the best avenues that you can for economic upliftment. One generation which economically manages to uplift itself, manages to uplift the entire family as a consequence of that.
And the future generation as well.
Future generations will always benefit. They will have better opportunities. So always try to be that change maker in your family. I know it is not easy. It is easier said than done. The circumstances will be very, very tough. But that is where a person has to think that the onus lies upon me to bring the entire family out of it and the future generations to be provided with the better opportunities. And I always say to the students, the generation of the 50s and the 60s was the generation of absolute scarcity. The generation of the 70s and the 80s was a generation of impoverishment where 2 meals a day was something that was considered a blessing. That is when that dream of a small house, etc., was sold. This is a generation which is a generation of surplus, if not in terms of resources, at least in terms of the opportunities. We have to look for those opportunities. It won't come in front of us, but we have to seek them out. So while I do agree, I couldn't agree more with the reforms which are required in the education system, in the management of the tests, etc. It is absolutely must. But I also agree with what you started the entire discussion with, that there cannot be one enabler for the entire society. The society, if they want to stand on their feet, they have to become that change maker, and that generation of surplus has to actually deliver on its promise.
As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. If you have any suggestions for our young, and if you are a young, what are you going to do to change your life and through that change the destiny of your family as well as the future generations? Do let us know in the comments. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Don't give up, don't quit, stay persistent, and the world will be at your feet. Thank you for watching.